On average, a single data breach in the healthcare sector can cost a hospital approximately $10.1 million. These financial losses are not just a reflection of the immediate aftermath of data breaches or cybersecurity attacks, but also encompass the long-term repercussions on patient trust, regulatory compliance, and the overall reputation of the healthcare institution. On the other hand, many health tech startups that are innovating in this space are required and obligated to adhere to standards such as HIPAA and SOC2. Failing to implement robust security standards and experiencing breaches in patient information can severely impact even the most successful unicorn companies, leading to significant devaluation. Today's guest is Justin Beals, the CEO of Strikegraph, a comprehensive platform designed to empower companies and health tech startups with the necessary tools for creating, managing, and evaluating a strong compliance program. This platform focuses on enhancing customer confidence, which in turn can significantly increase revenue and facilitate smoother integration within the healthcare sector. This episode is brought to you by Mesh AI. Mesh AI is a scheduling software for healthcare workers, including medical students, residents, physicians, and nurses. It alleviates administrative burden by leveraging AI algorithms for scheduling shifts. Mesh AI automates the creation of equitable schedules, efficiently assigns the most suitable staff for each shift, and facilitate easy shift training among healthcare professionals. Mesh AI is more than just a scheduling tool. It's specifically designed to cater to the unique training requirements of each residency program. By integrating advanced features, it not only manages schedules, but also supports the specialized training needs of healthcare professionals, ensuring that the training needs of each residency program are met. Justin, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for allowing me to join. I'm excited for the conversation. Yeah.
Me too, my friend. Justin, can you start telling me a bit and tell the audience, like, what does Strikegraph do?
Yeah. So Strikegraph is a security posture management platform. And really, on our solution, our customers are wanting to achieve a compliance outcome. So they're typically coming to us saying, hey, I need to be HIPAA compliant. I would like to be able to go through a SOC2 audit, ISO 27001. There are lots and lots of different types of security standards, data privacy standards, laws, and regulatory requirements out in the world. And on the Strikegraph platform, our customers will design a security posture, operate and distribute that security posture, and then collect evidence that that security was operated effectively. And of course, all that information drives up to these compliance outcomes.
Sweet. And when we talk about security in healthcare, like especially for a startup founder who's going through the space, there are many terms like HIPAA, SOC2, ISO 2700, GDPR, HITRUST. Like, it's a lot. So why we don't break it down a bit? So why we don't start with the basic ones? Like, what is HIPAA?
Yeah, HIPAA is a law, and that's a great place to start. HIPAA is a law about patient healthcare information. And actually, a lot of those standards that you mentioned, a lot of the compliance requirements that come out, they are driven by the fact that patient healthcare information not only needs to be kept private, but it's an incredibly valuable piece of information on the black market. So threat actors, people that would want to utilize that data to scam people or to basically generate revenue income for themselves, they'll attempt to steal patient healthcare information. And so these laws are built to protect that, mostly that data, almost specifically. And HIPAA is a law in the United States specifically about patient healthcare information. And the reason you need to be compliant with it is if you're touching patient healthcare information at all, you are liable if there is a breach of that patient healthcare information, because legally in the United States, you're required to maintain it in a secure fashion. And so if you have a data breach and you weren't maintaining it in a secure fashion, you're liable for a lawsuit. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what about SOC 2?
Yeah. SOC 2 is not a law, so we can start there. That's a difference. It is a type of security standard and assessment methodology. That's a little different than HIPAA. Like HIPAA just says, hey, you need to keep things secure, otherwise you could be sued. SOC 2 says this is the standard or the ways to keep things secure, and this is a way of testing to make sure that you kept it secure. The reason SOC 2 has grown a lot is that it's essentially a third party is doing the assessment of the company that is storing the data. And so, and it's called an audit, and they audit you to make sure that you're meeting the standard for security, the SOC 2 standard. Just a couple of other notes about SOC 2 is that it's a general business security standard. So there are companies that are services businesses, there are companies that are law firms, there are B2B SaaS platforms, and health tech companies that are all getting SOC 2 audited. Yeah.
Gotcha. So SOC 2 is more dynamic, ongoing assessment.
Yeah, it sounds like it should be dynamic, but in truth, it's a lot like a financial audit. You should, what happens is that all year round, you should be doing your security, right? And what you'll be doing is collecting receipts as a metaphor of, yes, I implemented that firewall, or yes, we reviewed our policy on an annual basis, or yes, we did the training that we signed up to do. And then what happens is usually once a year, you're going to turn that information over to an audit team. They're going to test to make sure that the receipts match what you agreed to do from a security perspective. And that is forming a report. And that report is essentially this group, this organization, they met the control requirements for SOC 2, or they may have some discrepancies in the report where, hey, the training wasn't accomplished last year, and that will show up on the report.
Gotcha. What about this GDPR thing?
Yeah. GDPR is another law. We're starting to get a theme here. Some of these things are laws. And whenever we say law, what we can think about is liability, right?
Exactly.
You
It's
don't
so
want to get
scary.
sued. Yeah. When we talk about things like SOC 2, they're more often used to prove to a potential partner or buyer that your product is secure and you've been assessed, like someone tested you. So where GDPR is concerned in the European Union, they've specified that individuals, usually consumers, need to have a right to have their information kept private. And a lot of this came out of business activities where especially large social media companies would sell the private information that they had collected from people on their social media platform to other buyers in the marketplace. And you didn't know who was buying your information. And so in Europe, they put together GDPR to stop people from essentially leaking this private information out. You also have a number of other rights, like the right to be forgotten, so you can request that your records are deleted, and there are other portions of the law. The thing with GDPR is you can state that you're compliant. However, if a breach were to happen and it were to be found out that you weren't compliant, then you are liable to be sued. So the background of GDPR as a law is a liability from a lawsuit if you're not maintaining GDPR compliance.
Yeah, and that reminds me, like talking about selling data, like Reddit, I heard they are selling their own data like to a company for $60 million.
Yeah. And of course, in the United States, we don't have GDPR.
Yeah, obviously, obviously.
Reddit is a US-based company, and it looks like they're selling all that data to people attempting to build AI tools to develop large language models, and it's very valuable data. I'm a Reddit user, and I'm perturbed by the discussion, to be sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, the last two, ISO 27001. What's that?
Yeah, ISO 27001. So, and there's a lot of ISO and number acronyms.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to be at least 100
It's a
or
word
more
salad.
at this point. Yeah. And so the ISO standards body is a standard setting body, and they set standards for a lot of different things, from quality assurance to mechanical engineering tolerances. ISO 27001 is definitely a security practice, a lot like SOC 2. And if you were to look back over time, what you'd see is ISO 27001 is a very Eurocentric standard and Asia Pac. It's been globally more prevalent than SOC 2. SOC 2 was designed by the AICPA, which is the governing body for certified public accountants in the United States. And so that's why we see SOC 2 a little bit in North America. However, ISO 27001 and SOC 2 can be considered somewhat interchangeable in that they are a general business standard to security. And you get audited or certified against that standard. And that provides trust for when you want to do business or share data with another technology or organization.
Gotcha. The last one, I promise. HITRUST. What does that mean?
Yeah. HITRUST or HITRUST is another standard very similar to ISO 27001 or SOC 2. It is both a security standard and an assessment methodology. There are a couple, it's a little more complicated than either ISO 27001 or SOC 2 in a couple of ways. It's more prescriptive, so it will say you must do this thing. There are tiers to the assessment. So you can start out at lightweight kind of HITRUST and move through to a more robust HITRUST. It is a little malleable. HITRUST at the upper end of the assessment is kind of designed for the risk structure or the risk profile of the organization being audited or certified on HITRUST. If you were to ask me easiest to hardest, how's it work? SOC 2 to HITRUST, it goes a little like this. SOC 2 is the easiest to get. ISO 27001 is the next hardest, and HITRUST would be the most hard at its highest assessment tier level. But they're all pretty close to each other. If you were to draw a Venn diagram of what do they test, they're probably about 80% covering each other.
Gotcha. And when we talk about like innovation in healthcare, or in medicine in general, like we have like the medical devices and the software. Are the compliance requirements different between a SaaS product and a medical device, or is it the same? Like, how does it work?
This is all getting really blurry, actually. I think there was a time where you could separate it a little bit, you know, but, and you're much more involved in the research around actual medical devices, but if it's not happening already, it can't be far off where your pacemaker is pushing data to the internet and it's being stored on the cloud, and then it's, you know, showing up in the doctor's office and they're able to read it. And so now we have all this data like roaming around, right? What we're seeing definitely is that anyone that stores patient healthcare information is going to get hit with HIPAA. Anyone that is providing medical software as a business associate, in other words, they're selling it to medical services providers, they're going to get caught under HIPAA, and they're probably going to be asked by the people that are utilizing their software to be either SOC 2 audited, ISO 27001 certified, or HITRUST audited or certified. But if you were the actual provider of medical software as a service, providing healthcare through your software, all of those are going to be true for you. And the thing that's happening is it's stacking. You know, it's not the situation where we're like, this is the right standard for me. You're going to wind up being, this is the 4 or 5 standards I need to be compliant with. And I'm sorry to bring that news to everyone. That's not what people want to hear, but it's what we see a lot of our customers at StrikeGraph doing, is that they're doing SOC 2 and HIPAA, and then they're going for HITRUST after they've been in the market for 2 years, and they want to build a better, more trustworthy presence with the marketplace.
Gotcha. Is there like a specific like a timeline? You can't get HITRUST unless like you are 2 years HIPAA and SOC 2, or like if you have the money and team, can you like get HITRUST from the beginning as well?
Yeah, the timelines are, some timelines are set and some timelines are malleable. For instance, on ISO 27001, the assessment methodology is staged in kind of 2 ways. First is you need to first get compliant, right? Like you've got to put the security in place so that you're meeting the requirements of the standard. Then over a period of time, you're operating that security, and then you first have an audit with one organization that's separate from you. And over 2 to 3 years, you're doing an audit maybe every 6 months to a year. And then when you reach that 2 to 3 year mark, you can engage a certifying body, and they review all those prior audits, and then they can do the full certification. HITRUST goes through a readiness assessment and then the full certification. SOC 2 is usually just the single audit, and then you have the report. But all of these things, you have to redo the report annually because they want to look back to the prior year. So you don't get it done and then you're done. You're kind of like constantly keeping up with it. The real trick is how fast can you implement the security to match the standard? So when we talk to organizations that are just getting started, what's going to happen for them, and they ask us all the time, how soon can I get this accomplished? We'll say something like for HIPAA, well, as soon as you've implemented the security practices and we have the first set of evidence that that security practice was operated, then you are HIPAA compliant. Now we just need to maintain that. But for SOC 2, for example, we need to operate those security controls for a little while, and then we can go into audit. Usually 3 months to 6 months is a period of time. Then we can do the first audit, and then annually we go back and re-audit. And ISO 27001 and HITRUST have these similar kind of assessment timeframes that you're dealing with.
Like, is there a ballpark or like approximate number? Like if a startup in healthcare want to get like HIPAA and SOC 2, like what would be the cost and what are the factors that will affect the cost?
Yeah, it's a dramatically changing marketplace too. When I first started, even looking into this space 6 years ago, the typical cost for SOC 2 and HIPAA would probably be in the $100,000 range.
Oh, wow.
It's dropped dramatically since then, in a large part to exactly what StrikeGraph does, is we make it immensely easier. You don't really need as much of the consultative approach to do it. Our technology both teaches our customers what security to implement and then helps them implement that right security. So we can get a customer into HIPAA compliance usually in under 30 days. It's not a very complicated process, but there are some things that need to be done. And so it can go quite quickly. Then when we're ready to do a SOC 2 audit, typically a SOC 2 engagement these days is going to cost a customer around $15,000 for the audit itself. There are some lower price providers, there are some higher price providers. We have a bundle type package that makes it really easy for customers where they can say, hey, I'm focused on SOC 2 and HIPAA, and we have a single price for them. The platform makes it very easy to get prepped for audit and then into audit, and we can take them through the audit process.
Gotcha. And from your experience, like what are like the common pitfalls and mistakes that companies do when they're trying to get this compliance or scale their compliance programs?
One is that they think they need to buy a bunch of security tools. Absolutely do not need to do that. The first thing I tell companies all the time, one thing I tell them is that StrikeGraph is not a security solution, right? Like we don't encrypt your data more. We don't change your firewall around. That's okay. What you first need to do is scope the right security practice for your business. And if you find that one of the requirements for your business is encryption, then we go and say, so what do we need to encrypt? And to be honest with you, usually you have all the technology tools you need. So instead of trying to buy a cloud compliance monitoring solution or something that's going to do email phishing training right off the bat before you've ever even thought about what's the right scope of security for us, don't go buy that technology. It gets in the way of actual compliance, but it's heavily marketed and heavily sold. And certainly you may decide that you need that security tool, an actual cybersecurity solution. But a lot of times what you find is that most of the platforms that we use, like AWS or the way we build technology, or even just good business processes, are enough to be fully compliant.
Gotcha. And when it comes not complying with the security, what happened. I think there's also like very famous recent example on what happened in the industry. Can you give us some consequences?
Yeah, well, first thing I want to say is that compliance is not a guarantee that you won't have a security breach. What it does
That's a good
do,
point. That's a very good point.
yeah, is it's certainly going to put in some better protections up front, so you are less likely. And also, really importantly, in the event of a security breach, you have to define the processes in which you'll respond. So you know as a team what you're going to do. So I just want to highlight that, right? Like it is worse to not meet any security standard. You are much more likely to have a breach. It is much more likely to be heavily catastrophic, but compliance itself is not a guarantee. What we see from a breach perspective happen most often, um, and the first thing I want to highlight is that one of the typical challenges is that none of us believe we're going to be a victim, but you have to understand how prevalent this is as a crime. It is the fastest growing vector of crime, and it is incredibly lucrative.
Oh yeah, I can't
Organiz
agree more. It's like
yeah,
it's crazy. That information is crazy. Sorry to cut you there, but like I've been through it. I've seen it in what happens in the hospital. Like it's crazy.
right. And the bad guys are getting a lot better at extracting the money that they want out of the system. So uh, one of the most easiest ways to get hacked is through social engineering, basically hacking the human being on the other side, an employee that you have, and then they gain access to a particular system, and that results in a really bad outcome for your organization. We regularly kind of review typical outcomes or typical breaches that are happening. I can tell you, for example, that one of the breaches that I reviewed recently, and I think it's in your area, is United Healthcare, and it's still going on. Um,
Oh yeah.
we, we're trying to learn a little bit more about what happened with United Healthcare breach, but for example, what we can tell is that there's an ongoing ransomware attack. The way that they were able to penetrate the system was through some social engineering work that gave them access to the data. And essentially, they've been able to take down the transaction system. And so we are currently hearing about pharmacies having to fill all their prescriptions by hand with the doctors because there's no system available right now that they can get the prescription information out. And especially how much have we interconnected our healthcare systems with digital data, right? You lose a critical transaction system in the infrastructure like that, we have to go back to 1980 and how we used to provide health.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So it's only growing. You know, it's going to get worse. I'm sorry to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and like so let's say we implemented SOC 2 or HIPAA. Is there like a way to counter this? Is there a way like to in a simple terms, like I can hire a hacker and tell them, okay, so hack my system. Is it safe or no?
Certainly, what you're describing is something we call penetration testing, and that's
Hmm.
a great thing to do. Um, I think from a preventative measure perspective, there's a couple things that are really easy to do, and I just really recommend them in a big way. The first one is turn on two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication for everything, absolutely everything. It is so easy these days to crack just a username and password on a website that if you have your, healthcare reps logging in with a username and password, it's not enough. They need multi-factor authentication. The second thing that is really critical is training. Security training needs to be an absolute invest in it, make it exciting, make it interesting, hire the best trainer you can find, make it a part of the culture of your organization because everyone at your organization is a potential target and a victim for a breach. And those are the two areas where we see the most amount of issues crop up. So multi-factor authentication, effective training are really some of the best ways to stay away from a potential breach. Those are all parts of HIPAA requirements and SOC2. So if you go and pass these particular standards or make them a bar that you want to achieve from a security implementation perspective, you're going to hit a lot of the most important preventative measures. And that's really helpful. Yeah.
And with all this advancement, like in AI and large language models, where do you see like AI is playing a role in the future of security and healthcare compliance?
Well, certainly it's a constant arms race, right, where security is concerned. So
Yeah,
those
exactly.
those that are a potential threat are constantly ramping up what they're capable of, and we use the same tools for bettering security. So I'll talk a little bit on the threat side, and I don't mean to terrify anyone, but we probably should be aware of what's coming. Certainly, and I think we saw this with some of the election system issues we've had in the United States. But when you think at scale, where you have 300 million people in the United States, and let's say that the vast majority of them have a Facebook account, and we can learn a lot of information about them because we have data on them in Facebook. That means that at scale, we can design an algorithm to target very specific people with very specific characteristics. Now, with large language models, we are able to do that same thing, but even more precisely in how we want to talk to them. Yeah. So the social engineering issues, the ability to hack a human and get them to provide some information they shouldn't, is going to get harder to guard against. At the same time, we can use these LLMs actually to kind of drive what we call a honeypot style acquisition, where we can, basically catch threat actors attempting to hack what seems like a human being. So there are, ways to use those tools to our benefit.
Correct.
I'm becoming less and less secure feeling on things like phone and video, because we're starting to see these types of AI tools essentially live changing an accent or live changing how the person looks from a video perspective, so that you're seeing someone that might look like your boss in the video feed, but the person operating it is definitely not.
Not your boss. Yeah, exactly. Especially with like Sora's OpenAI models, it's crazy. Like it's scary. The accuracy of that video is like it's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's this is probably not helpful, but I've been working on machine learning for quite some time in my career in computer science. And I have seen the progress as pretty normal. As a matter of fact, we thought we stalled out and that we weren't making good progress. And then we've had some innovations come along that seemed to me pretty normal. We would have expected it to happen this way. But I think to everyone else, there is a lot of surprise.
Yeah.
Because when they come out, it's shocking almost the fidelity, the precision with which the large language models might work, or video or images that we're able to produce from a prompt. But to me, this is pretty standard, and it's going to keep progressing. It's going to get more and more capable of producing media based upon a simple prompt. Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to shift gears now and talk about you and on your entrepreneurial journey and Strikegraph. So as the CEO of the company and the co-founder of the company, what inspired you to start Strikegraph?
Yeah. Well, I love starting companies. It's been a habit of mine, a dangerous one, but a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And I started doing it in a bootstrapped way. I didn't have access to capital, but wanted to build great organizations. But this was a while ago, so I really started trying to start companies in like 97, 98. What inspired me to start StrikeGraph specifically were a couple things, and some of it is very easy answers. One is that I wanted to build a venture capital backed company. And so I was looking for a problem that was big enough to attract investors for a great outcome for all of us. The second thing was that I was a chief technology officer, and I was trying to help the companies I was building, and we were dealing with very sensitive data, hit these security outcomes. And I was a big fan, I am a big fan of the security compliance practice. I am so glad that we have bars to meet in the security work, because for so long it's been like, oh, this is this person's recommendation and this is this person's recommendation. But you didn't really have a playbook so much on generally good security practices. And so that I quite liked. I thought it was good. The third thing that inspired me to start StrikeGraph is I have this really weird off-the-wall experience. There was about a decade when I worked in the education industry, and we did put a lot of learning online. And one of the things that I did a lot of invention work around was massive sets of standards in education. So I'm sure in medical training and education, there are certain standards that you have to meet as you learn. And I built a lot of data product that would take a content, like a chapter in a textbook, and tell you across many, many different sets of education standards where that mapped onto. And so this appealed to me. I felt like it was a problem I could solve. Yeah.
Wow. And talking more about StrikeGraph and like the intersection of this with healthcare, and are there any, or could you share some how like StrikeGraph has helped or is helping health tech companies to improve its approach to security compliance? Do you have any like an example?
Oh, yeah. And first off, a lot of our customers are in the life sciences space.
Okay.
And we are very proud of the work we do with them. We have companies that are medical software solutions that are providing healthcare directly, and they're doing HIPAA, they're doing SOC2, and they're doing HITRUST with us. And because they're doing this work with us, not only are they compliant to a standard, but it's winning them deals because they're trusted with the data they want to share, and they're a more resilient organization and more effective in their security practice. I was just at the Vive conference last week in Los Angeles, meeting with a lot of our customers, talking with them and working with them through their compliance outcomes. We have a lot of partners in the space who are both assessors or security services providers, or even standard setting bodies that we work with. One of my customers I'm quite proud of is a company called Tau-Site, and they do a lot of really great security for health care organizations. They've been really effective at implementing good security themselves. They use the platform to make sure they have a good scope that fits their business, and then they're meeting these compliance outcomes that give their customers trust in working on their platform.
Gotcha. And let's say I own a company in life sciences and I'm just in the beginning of my journey. What advice would you offer for like health tech startups who are just beginning in their journey? What should they do next?
Yeah. The earlier you start implementing security practices, the easier it is. Now, if you're a 5-person firm, you're just getting started, you're trying to get things rolling, it doesn't mean you need to do HITRUST or even just all of HIPAA right off the bat, though. But I think whether it's StrikeGraph or some other methodology, looking at those things and saying, hey, you know what? We could go ahead and do these first 5 security things. That's okay. Like let's get that rolling. And then you start to get a vision. Guess what? As we run our first research study where we have patient healthcare information, we're going to need to be here. And now you have visibility, because the worst thing to do is to be like, oh, we've built all this stuff, we've built a company, we've raised a couple rounds of funding, we've hired 25 people, and now we need to do security because
Oh my God,
everyone's
yeah.
going to get
That's too
distracted.
late.
Yeah. So, I mean, like most things that are valuable culturally, if you make it a part of the early culture, even if it's just a little bit, it helps a ton as you grow. It's not a disruption to the business. Yeah.
Gotcha. That brings us to the end. Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I think I'm just really, really appreciative of all that our healthcare industry, of course, does for our communities and treatment and our happiness in life. And I'm grateful to share these concepts around security with them as a real part of what we do as good organizations and good stewards.
Thank you so much. And for our listeners, the StrikeGraph website is going to be in the comments below, and the links to Justin's website and LinkedIn also is going to be comments below. So please check the description and the comments. So you are going to find all the links there. Thank you so much for listening.